We're about 5 weeks away from the year mark out from the new Sunrise on the Reaping movie. And yes, I am keeping track of it in this way. Thankfully, the second Wicked movie is coming out to sort of fill in the void this November. However, there is lots of little bits of news and inklings and pictures and all sorts of things coming out about the movie. And every time I see one online, I just kind of screenshot it and save it for later, and we're gonna talk about all of it right now. As far as photos for like filming from the movie, McKenna Grace is holding down the fort for us. I think she knows how important this movie is to so many people, and she is being our social media point of contact for this movie, which is greatly appreciated. We got several pictures of the cast in Spain, and it's so cute. It really does seem like they have such a good dynamic as a cast on the movie, which I think is so good to see because that is how the past movies have been. I feel like we got to see that a lot with obviously the Hunger Games movies. They had all those tributes. There was so much behind the scenes content when the DVD came out that it was really clear that they were all really close, and it was a very strong friendship dynamic between all of the actors, which was really fun to see. And I think they had the same thing in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I think everybody just kind of loves the fact that Joseph Zada has now been adopted as older brother to all these kids. Every time I see a photo of him online from this movie, it is just him with like children hanging off of his arms, and it's so funny. The ladybug photo is absolutely diabolical. Yeah, here's another post-corporate needs you to find the difference between these pictures, and one of them is Gru. And it's just Joseph Zada's so tall compared to the rest of them that he really does give off this vibe, and it's so funny. We've gotten some photos of the arena. This first one of just Joseph Zada is so funny because there's these like bear shirts that the cast keeps wearing, and apparently McKenna Grace bought them for all the main actors who have been there working and stuff like that, and I think that's so fun. Like, what on earth? They just found them in like a gift shop or something like that, and people were saying that Joseph Zada found them, and McKenna Grace was having to defend herself to the point that she's been on talk shows being like, no, those were my idea. I just think it's hilarious that they're all wearing these. The behind the scenes photos of the set look so good. A lot of bright, colorful stuff going on with like the flowers, and this one flower, is that a camera question mark? It's like, it looks like a push pin. I don't really know exactly what we're supposed to be doing with that, but there's wires connected to it. So I'm wondering, in the arena, are we gonna get a lot of obvious footage from the flowers? Now I'm trying to remember, and I don't think there were any real cameras that we saw in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes other than the overhead view, because it was still so early in the games. They didn't have all these hidden cameras, which we even see that when Caesar Flickerman, Lucy Gray drops, below the arena or something like that, and Caesar says, we don't have cameras in there, but we will next year. And how there was not all as much footage as there could have been, I guess, in that arena, because they didn't know to hide cameras so all over the place. Whereas by the time we get to Katniss, there's cameras constantly from every angle. We even see her looking into a tree, and there's like a camera stuck in the knot of the branch or something like that, and because it is such a constant surveillance. I don't think we touched on this as much in the movie, but in the books, a lot of the birds are cameras inside the arena, and so I'm wondering if this is like sort of a middle step again. In a lot of ways, we see the very early versions of the Hunger Games in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and then we see what they become in the Hunger Games. Obviously, like, those are the last ones. And so there's this middle section where Haymitch is operating, where they've gotten a lot of their processes for this like horrible yearly event nailed down. They have the Capitol parades, they have like better accommodations for the tributes, they have these cameras that are probably hidden amongst the stuff, but they're not hidden in a way that the tributes could never find them, sort of like how the Hunger Games is. And there's still mishaps that happen, and the tributes train in a gym, which is better than nothing, that Lucy Gray got nothing, whereas Katniss and Peeta, they're in this high-tech facility. So there's a lot of middle steps that we get to see with Haymitch, and I'm wondering if this is a camera and it's sort of like an obvious camera, and whether the tributes end up looking at them a lot. That would be really interesting if characters keep looking at the cameras like an Office cut, but in the most brutal and horrible way possible. It all looks very lush, which I think fits very well with the descriptions that we get in the book. This is what I love to see, the cast reading the book. Now, some of these children are really young to be reading this book. Not that there was anything, too crazy explicit in Sunrise on the Reaping, but it's not like, I wouldn't categorize it as a children's book, that's for sure. I feel like The Hunger Games, the very first book, is more subdued in a lot of the violence, and we see more of it as we go through, but there's still, I feel like, teen, young adult, whereas Sunrise on the Reaping, it's still appropriate, I guess, but it's a lot more chilling in a way that I don't think the original trilogy was necessarily, though I love to see actors with their source material, especially when we're doing such an important adaptation such as this. There's a lot to live up to with this movie, and I know that there's got to be a lot of pressure. These kids look really young. Maybe they're like a little bit older than they look, but they're kind of having to step into a franchise that is known for being extremely accurate as far as the adaptation goes. So much of it is word for word, and at least for me, exactly what I imagined when I was reading. We got a lot of behind-the-scenes photos from the actual reaping day. I assume some of the extras are taking photos and stuff like that. And the aesthetic, like, I would not have immediately nailed this down. I don't know the 70s that well, but somebody did comment, like, we're getting very 70s aesthetic in this. A lot of the characters have, like, bell bottoms on, so that is, I guess, would fit really well with that. And it does have this sort of retro feel to a lot of the posters and stuff like that. These, like, they're kind of muted tones, but it feels very, like, funky, geometric, which I think fits that like aesthetic. And it definitely gives us another step in between the high-tech, super futuristic feel of the Capitol by the time we get to Katniss. Obviously, District 12 doesn't feel like that, but the technology available is at that level. And then when we see Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, it feels very, I don't know if 20s is right. It's definitely like later than that, but it feels very kind of old and like retro. I guess 70s is also retro, but like the word vintage comes to mind more for me. And so when we're seeing these pictures, like they do look like, I don't know, vintage album covers and like vintage book covers and stuff to me. We get a look at the orange spray paint of No Capital, which you've read the book, you know where that comes from, and signs for the gumdrops, which is heartbreaking. So as far as I know, nothing has been said about Merrilee Donner being cast. And a lot of people were thinking that McKenna Grace is going to play both roles, which I don't know. Like, let me know what you think about this, because I just don't see them doing that. That's not really how I feel like the movie feels, at least like how the franchise feels. I would expect them to have someone different. However, when we get to the end of the book and Haymitch sees Merrilee and thinks that it's Maysilee, then it would maybe make sense for McKenna Grace to play both, and they just, you know, use makeup to change some of her features slightly. I know they're identical twins, but I think it would be weird to just have two McKenna Graces. I'm trying to picture, like, how they do it as the Parent Trap. It feels normal in the Parent Trap. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking that, but this picture has two girls who obviously have to be Merrilee and Maysilee. Their hair's the same. They're dressed very similarly, which Maysilee tells us that their mother dresses them exactly alike all the time and she hates it. Obviously, if they're going to have them in the same shot, you'd probably want to use a body double if you're just filming them from behind, like walking to the reaping or something like that. It just seems weird that they haven't announced casting for her character when they've announced like everybody else at this point. The thing that's throwing me off a little bit is the peacekeepers. It's the ponchos, I think. So in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, in the movie at least, the visual that we get, it's a uniform, but it's not obviously the peacekeepers in the Hunger Games. They're very militarized by the time we get to Katniss. But in Ballad, it's just like, I don't know, kind of military style clothing that is white and gray. And so this kind of serves as that middle step again, because by the time we get to the peacekeepers, they have these masks that are, I think they're electronic. They just kind of slide into place and stuff like that. And they have a lot of tech, especially considering them being in the districts where the districts don't have very much technology. And then this again could, I guess, be a middle section. They have these weird like masks. It looks like a gas mask, which I don't know if they would really, they don't use like tear gas or anything, think. Maybe they include it in the movie, but when we see them up on this platform, they don't have the ponchos anymore. Are these towels or like blankets or something? They just all have the same one. I'm so confused. I don't like this look though. It's really weird. I have seen this a couple different places. McKenna Grace and Joseph Zada have apparently been rewatching the original Hunger Games trilogy to see how Josh and Jen portrayed Peeta and Katniss. And McKenna Grace has said that Joseph Zada's portrayal of Haymitch is gut-wrenching. The story's already so intense and sad that I could see it, you know. Obviously his character is going through a lot in this story, but to hear it from one of the actors themselves talking about how intense it is to watch, and they don't even see it with the score or the color grading or any of that type of stuff, I just think we're all in for like a really rough time watching this movie. I do actually think it's gonna probably hurt worse than Mockingjay, which is really saying something. It's just, I think at this point there's so many layers of callbacks and details and stuff that the fandom knows so well that they're going to be able to sprinkle into this movie to just add so much extra emotion to it. Which, that's something I really liked in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Like, they were able to bring back things from the original trilogy for people who, like, love the books and movies. Specifically, like, when they were talking about how it was too early for Katniss. And obviously all of us are like, haha, it's too early for Katniss. But Snow and Lucy Gray are talking, and as soon as they say that, they bring in some of the score from Catching Fire at the very beginning of the movie, when Katniss is, like, looking out over where she's hunting and stuff, and she has this really, really intense and specific look on her face, and she's trying to get over all of this trauma that happened in the first Hunger Games. And that moment, that emotion, is what they decide to pull back when we say Katniss for the first time in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I feel like there's going to be lots of little things like that where we can pull on. Not to mention all of the music that we got in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We're going to, I think, see through lines of that in this movie, because there are still going to be these echoes of Lucy Gray and the Covey, because they don't exist in the same capacity anymore by the time we get to Haymitch. But it hasn't been so much time that we would have completely lost sort of the oral tradition that the Covey had. I love this, and I love that they're, like, just talking so much about the movie in interviews and stuff like that. So this is the songs that they play to kind of get into character. And McKenna Grace uses Von Dutch by Charlie XCX to get into the character of Maysilee, which is just, oh, it's so absolutely perfect. Because Maysilee does have all the sass you could want in a character like her. And I think that song really portrays it. Maysilee is not quiet or gentle, and so having a song like Von Dutch is just, like, so fun and perfectly in line with the type of Maysilee I was hoping we're gonna get. And so that was really, like, promising to see that. I don't like it. I'm gonna trust Joseph Zada's vision here, because I don't like this song, and I don't like it for Haymitch. Personal taste. But I remember looking it up, because as soon as I saw this post about McKenna Grace talking about Von Dutch, I was like, oh yes, like, I love this song. And so then I immediately went up and looked up the Haymitch song, and I was like, no. I wanted a song to listen to on repeat and really, like, feel the feels and to understand where he's coming from. And I just don't with this song, I guess. But interested to hear any thoughts that you have about this. That's all I've had saved over the past couple weeks. I did make a video a little while back about the original release of the arena and some of the tribute outfits and stuff like that that they've put out. So I will link that somewhere about if you would like to go watch that. Other than that, we continue to wait for a trailer. I can't wait for that to drop. It's going to be amazing. And of course, as soon as the movie comes out, I will be talking about it on here profusely. Please like this video if you liked it. Click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Caitlin. Thanks for watching. Bye.